Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week, the Fantastic Four may not be so fantastic. Meryl Streep tries to reconnect with her daughter in Ricki and The Flash. Shaun the Sheep hits the big city. We'll also review Dark Places, and in our home media moment, Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence team up for the third time in Serena. And for the last time, we'll have a triple feature of older films for you. Starting next week, we're just going to be doing the old classic and the Oscar A to Z. So we have for you our final new classic, $1 Million Arm. We've also got Listener's Choice Old Classic, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and the Oscar-nominated The Bad and the Beautiful. First up, though, Fantastic Four. Joe, let's hear it.
Okay. Well, Fantastic Four is a superhero film, obviously, based on the Marvel Comics team of the same name. You guys might have heard of them. They were basically the core of the Marvel family, the first original character Stan Lee created. It is the third theatrical film to have the Fantastic Four name attached to it by 20th Century Fox. And it is, once again, a reboot of the Fantastic Four film franchise. Now, the question is, though, could the third time be the charm? Dan hinted it wasn't. Directed by Josh Trank with a screenplay by three writers, the film stars Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara, and Jamie Bell as the Four. In Fantastic Four, the team must learn to harness their abilities gained from going into an alternate universe and having to save the Earth from a friend-turned-enemy. Now, this version is actually closer to the Ultimate version rather than the main universe. That's one reason the characters are much younger here. I just did a video on this recently, so I kind of got this all out. I'll try to keep this relatively brief if I can, but it might be difficult. I'm going to try. First of all, I will say that I went into this with no expectations. You know, I expected nothing because I heard nothing good about this movie going in. So I wanted to go in with an open mind and actually look for the positives. So I would try not to fanboy too much. Now, you'll go into this movie, and I think that one thing we'll say right off the bat is that the cast is good. I think that they picked a great cast. There's some really talented people here. I mean, Miles Teller we talked about before. Kate Mara was on House of Cards, and Michael B. Jordan. We all love him. There's some great actors here. And the plot does hold some interest in the beginning. I think that the scene where they establish some of the characters early on when they're kids, there are some good lines, there's some humor, and as they get older, there seems like there's a possibility these characters could go somewhere. Then, once they actually go into this alternate dimension, they get their superpowers, that's when things go really downhill. And from a fan perspective, the biggest thing that's really a problem here, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it needs to be said, Dr. Doom is completely wrong. And the sad thing is that this is coming from a person who, those original Fantastic Four movies, who directed those guys? Was that Tony Scott?
No, Tim Story.
Tim Story, that's right. The Tim Story first two Fantastic Four movies, they were silly, they were cheesy, they weren't very good, but at least they had some of the spirit of the comics, and their Dr. Doom, which is the main reason why Fantastic Four is popular, to be honest, he was wrong. But he was so much closer to most iterations of Doom than this one. I couldn't even tell you who this character is supposed to be. It's not Dr. Doom. There are only two aspects of his character they got right. He likes Sue Storm, which is like 2 lines mentioned, and he doesn't like Reed Richards. So, literally, I can't even say they got the basics, the bare bones of the most iconic supervillain in comics. Then there's a time skip after they get their powers, and it seems like there's just a lot of different plot lines and different ideas. And it leads to this battle, this conclusion with this rushed villain whose motivations are completely out of nowhere, whose powers don't make any sense and are so beyond the Four, there's no way they can beat him. And spoilers, they do because they can. There's no way they could win.
Because they have to.
Because
yes.
they're literally, this guy, okay, the same powers that made one guy stretchy and turned one guy into a rock monster, okay, somewhat feasible, I guess. Turn this other guy into an omnipotent being who can control the ground and make teleportation devices with his mind. And yet, if you punch him in the face, he goes down. The biggest problem with the movie, though, is that, in all honesty, as bad as it was, I could forgive some of it because there was potential. But this battle should be like the second act, where they lose and then they have to get together, learn to be the Fantastic Four and beat him. But no, the movie ends. It just ends, like, anticlimactically. And they aren't really an established superhero team. They aren't established characters that have the family dynamic. We don't really know them except for Reed Richards, who, ironically, is probably the most fleshed out character in the movie. I think Teller did a pretty good job with that. I'll admit, I thought they got Reed Richards pretty right, but that's about it. And it was just kind of ugly, dull, and trying to be too dark. There were a few hints of some good lines here. There was some potential in the beginning and a great cast, but there's only so much you can do with obviously very, very underdeveloped ideas. I'm gonna give it a few bones just because I thought it was decent for the first half hour, 45 minutes before it completely tanked. But I'll leave it with a D+.
Well, obviously I can't go into nearly as much detail about the origins of comic book to screen here. I did see The Rise of the Silver Surfer when that came out. It was underwhelming, obviously. But this movie is completely boring. It's all over the place. There's nary a clear vision in sight for what this movie was supposed to be. The CGI is horrible. And I can't even agree, Joe, that the first half hour was that interesting. The first scene or two where they're kids and, Homer Simpson's their teacher and, they go to the science fair and everything. That was fine because it was maybe building to something, like you said. But then, 40 minutes later, nothing has still happened yet. I went to see this with my nephew, who I've brought up on the show before. He's 10 now, and he just started maybe in the last 2 years getting into superhero movies. Captain America, Guardians, all that stuff. So he sort of understands the tropes of what superhero movies are supposed to have. He turned to me 45 minutes into the movie and literally said, "Are you sure this is Fantastic Four?" Because nothing was happening. They weren't getting superpowers. And I was like, yeah, trust me, it is. But, I couldn't back it up with anything.
Well, nothing. But they don't really get their powers till later on, yeah.
Cut to, okay, so they finally have their powers. And then, maybe an hour and 20 minutes in. So there's only about 20 minutes left of the movie. He turns to me again and he says, "Who is the bad guy even supposed to be? He hasn't shown up yet." And
Good question.
And I was and I sort of remember Dr. Doom. But I was just I think it might be the military. Because Dr. Doom hadn't shown up yet. So I was even wondering, is that what this movie's about?
He never really shows up either, Dan. It's okay.
And right, I guess the real one never shows up. So, why are they waiting so long for something to happen? I agree with you, Joe. They should have had that fight scene at the end in the middle of the movie, which would mean they would have to get their powers about a half hour before they do. It's a total mess. I will admit Miles Teller, as always, gives a good performance. He's good in it. Him and Jamie Bell have okay chemistry.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think Jamie Bell was awful once he turned into the Thing.
Fair,
I don't think that was him, actually.
They were playing the Thing very differently than it normally is. I don't think they let Jamie Bell act.
Yeah, I
I
don't think they did either.
Which is very strange.
I thought Checklist was better.
He was,
Definitely.
actually. He was more like the Thing.
I think he's the most memorable part of the Silver Surfer movie.
Yeah, probably.
His checklist is a thing. But anyway, it's just above an F. I give it a D. Justin?
I feel like this is going to be one of those movies that continues to foreshadow a big thing I see happening a lot with comic book movies is this one filmmaker, in this case Josh Trank, who made a film I liked, Dan not quite so much, Chronicle, and then slap him with a more mainstream movie and hope he pulls out something amazing. And then there's corporate involvement, and what we get is a shoddy mess that we're supposed to just consume and enjoy. We can't. Here's the thing. This only really feels like a Josh Trank movie for about those first 30-40 minutes where it's fairly coherent. The reshoots this movie went through, glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was. No one's been liable to say. Apparently, Matthew Vaughn, who did X-Men First Class, the first Kick-Ass, Kingsman as well, possibly.
Well, he certainly left a lot of his flair at the door.
It just feels like a bunch of half-baked ideas, and a couple I really, really liked. For example, I don't think we needed Dr. Doom. I feel like if it was honestly Fantastic Four versus military involvement, that would have been a really cool concept.
Well, you should never lead your first movie with the biggest bad villain. You build up to him.
Definitely.
It's a mistake that all these movies have made.
No, absolutely. And if you are going to have this big bad, I'll admit the Fantastic Four doesn't exactly have the greatest rogues gallery around.
No, but you could start with Mole Man. It's okay. Get him out of the way. He is a classic after all.
Oh, great. Then you're going to be Incredibles, Joe.
Hey, it worked there.
If you're going to do that, find a way to get him involved early, or at least give us some reason to empathize with him instead of being this whiny jerk who I honestly spent the duration of the entire movie making me wonder, what are you doing here? Oh, I beat you to the project. You did, but all I've seen you do throughout this entire movie is whine and be a jerk.
Well, literally, he contributed nothing. I mean, they all kissed up to him because he was this great scientist, but literally, Reed did the whole thing himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you said you were smarter than me. Well, we were thinking, like, he is smarter than you, though. It's just, I'm sorry.
It's like, I really can't even empathize with you in the smallest thing.
Well, he was a very, very thinly developed character anyway.
Until we get to random third acts for no apparent reason.
Destroy the Earth because I'm evil.
Which is textbook very bad because evil.
Yep.
Then, as you both said, it just ends. And you're left with this really sour taste in your mouth. I'm going to give it a D because, honestly, for those moments that did legitimately feel like a Josh Trank film, I was on board. Yeah. I wasn't in love with it, but I was on board. I was curious to see where it was going. But then come Act 2 and 3, it's just a complete mess. The script is terrible. The acting is not great. The visuals, I don't think are as bad as you, Dan, but they're certainly under par with the likes of Avengers and X-Men.
Yeah, I thought they were very weak for a superhero film. Of this budget.
It's just a colossal disappointment.
Yeah, it just wasn't very appealing.
All right, well, obviously we're all on the same page here with the movie itself. So let's talk about the whole Trank thing. I mean, obviously the night before this premiered, I guess, or something.
It's not
I think
my
it was
fault.
like Thursday, right? That, yeah, he tweeted basically saying, like,
classic.
Hey, guys. Like,
it's a classic Cameron Crowe all over again. Hey.
Yeah, basically.
Look, I made this movie, but I don't blame me.
This is not at all the vision I had, this and that.
I believe the quote was, a year ago I had a version of this that would have gotten great reviews. Mm-hmm. This is not it.
Yeah, because by that point, I mean, it was already hovering around the 10% mark on Rotten.
That's bad.
So obviously the buzz around this was horrible. And I don't know, I mean, if there was that much studio involvement that ruined his vision, I can't really blame him for saying, hey, this is not my movie.
Do we know exactly what they did? Like, specifically, what were they trying to gear it towards? Because obviously the studio...
To my knowledge, Joe, I believe they wanted the ending to be more action-packed.
Yes, I read that as well, which is ridiculous because...
It's 5 minutes.
It's only 5 minutes. So what was the less action-packed version of this movie? That was the only action scene in the entire film.
And it's a superhero movie.
Right.
It's kind of lacking a little bit.
So, wow, what did the non-action version look like?
I mean, if it was going to progress like the first part of the film was, I'm guessing it would have been a more subdued movie. Now,
I'm sorry, good.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I agree with you, Justin. I think that there was some potential there. It was coherent. I kind of liked where the story was going. But I'm not entirely sure if it would have been a Fantastic Four film either. I mean, it seems to me like they were trying to insert more comic booky elements into the movie, but there wasn't enough, though. Anyway, so what did they really fix? I don't know.
Yeah, I just have no idea, Joe. And I feel like where Trank was trying to go with it was try and hype up the darker element to set up the stakes, and sort of be like The Hobbit in terms of the first Hobbit movie, that is, where it's like they're traveling, there's a skirmish here or there, sort of like the one scene later on where Miles Teller is by himself and he's fighting off like 3 or 4 military guys.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they have to, like, be separated and then come together, I mean, if it had worked as an origin story, but it's only a half-baked origin anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's excruciatingly underdeveloped, but...
That's the biggest problem I have with the movie. I mean, the thing I thought was, if they had actually made this movie longer, ironically, it probably would have been better.
It is quite short for a superhero movie.
I remember...
An hour and 40?
The guys I was talking with, like, that when that final fight scene came, they were like, is this the end of the movie? Are they gonna... And then they just killed Doom like it's nothing, like... They evaporated Dr. Doom like he was nothing after he was invincible. Like, like.
Well, Joe,
I don't.
I mean, he's stronger than all of them separately.
But he's not strong.
But he's not strong, and
But
oh my god,
just a great sign of the wonderful script delivery in this movie.
Once that math, I mean, like, well, obviously he kicked all your butts pretty easily.
Right.
I don't think if you team up, but no, apparently that worked.
But no, it worked very quickly too.
He's creating a polar rift,
And that whole gag at the end where they go and see their new facility and they're like, oh, we should have a superhero name. Oh my god, that was painful to watch.
You guys aren't even superheroes. What have you done yet?
Painful to watch.
You guys don't know each other. Oh, it's fantastic. Like, you don't have the right to make that corny joke. I mean, really, I can't really say it was a disappointment. It's kind of a shame. Like, how did you mess up this badly? Mm-hmm. I don't really... But I don't know. The saddest thing for me is I felt like there was potential here for something at least different with the Fantastic Four, and sadly the Tim Story ones are significantly better, which I would have never thought that I would have said years ago. I mean, I'm the guy that used to hate on those movies.
Right.
I take some of that back because you know what? The fundamental
Comparatively,
some of the fundamental elements of the Fantastic Four, at least you feel like they are.
They at least feel like the Fantastic Four.
They're silly. They're not perfect. There's some questionable acting, but they are the Fantastic Four. At least they're all together throughout the movie, working together, fighting the bad guy. That's more than I could say for this one.
So up next is Ricki and the Flash. Meryl Streep here stars as Ricki Randazzo, though that's just her stage name. To her estranged family, including ex-husband Pete, played by Kevin Kline, her suicidal daughter, played by Streep's real-life daughter, Mamie Gummer, and her 2 sons who hate her, she is just Linda, the woman who left them in Indianapolis to forge a music career in L.A., which proved unsuccessful, but she stayed on the West Coast anyway. The film centers around Ricki being called upon by her ex to return home to help her daughter deal with her own divorce and her psychological problems. But Ricki's presence isn't so welcome to Pete's second wife, played by Audra McDonald, and the two instantly clash. Rick Springfield co-stars as Ricki's bandmate and boyfriend. Written by Oscar winner Diablo Cody and directed by Oscar winner Jonathan Demme, and starring, of course, multiple Oscar winner Streep, one might think that Ricki would be a little more effective in its attempt to deliver the heartfelt family drama with comic undertones that it wants to, but it just never really connects.
Whoa, Dan, you surprised me.
I mean, Streep is obviously fine as Ricki. We've seen in her other films she can sing Into the Woods, Mamma Mia, but I never really bought her character. She's this rebel rocker who loads on too much eye makeup wherever she goes, but we're supposed to believe she's also a hardcore Republican who spouts off her political stances on stage at the dive bar where the Flash plays.
Wait, what?
It makes no sense.
That doesn't sound like a rocker.
Now, Joe, you didn't get to see this movie, which is why you're so shocked about this.
I am shocked.
But even her children in this movie point out the inconsistency, to which Ricki just shrugs off, because she's a rebel, man. She doesn't care what her kids think. Like, it's just so ridiculous.
It sounds great. I should have seen it.
The humor never really lands, and some of the dramatic scenes are touching, but never really get to the point of effectiveness. I also don't understand why it's even called Ricki and the Flash. Her band plays such a minor role. It's mostly about attempting to reconnect with her family, make amends for basically abandoning them, though Ricki's only really even half interested in that storyline, and as such, I was only half interested in the film. I give it a C.
To be fair, though, is her band... Did they make original songs or was it just covers?
All covers.
Well, who cares then?
Even at her son's wedding, I thought maybe she was going to write him a song or something because she's, I don't have any money, I'm living day to day here.
So
they go up and they do a Bruce Springsteen song.
She's a rebel that abandoned her family to start a cover band.
Well, I mean, she went out there to start a real music career, but it never took off. She had one album that was a big flop, and so now that's what she's doing.
If you make a band, though, if you're going to keep doing performances, you have to put at least a few original songs in there.
You're telling me.
I'm just saying.
Listen.
What's the point otherwise?
I mean, Joe, I know you liked this more than Justin and I did, but Danny Collins...
Yeah.
Similar storyline with the, sort of abandoning the family and everything.
Very similar.
I'll give him this. He was at least a successful musician.
So he had a reason to go away.
And from the previews, that's what I thought this was going to be. I thought she left her family because she became some huge success story.
That's what I thought by the previews.
But no.
Not really.
Let's hear what Justin thinks of Ricki and the Flash here.
Well, Diablo Cody, the stripper turned screenwriter, with the subtlety of a rock to the head.
Whoa.
Sometimes, I would argue only 2 times really, she actually has something to say, and the rest of it feels like a whiny teenage girl rambling with a character that we're supposed to sympathize with. And I agree with you, Dan. I just never really bought her character. Mm-hmm. Even when she's clashing with her boyfriend on stage, which I thought was just awkward.
It was awful.
Poorly put together. It feels like a bunch of things that are trying to collide all together, and they're not. And they don't, and even once the credits roll, they don't fully do so. Mm-hmm. I mean, Streep's definitely giving it her all. She's having fun with the role, and I appreciate that. And I'll give you the fact that there are some really good dramatic moments. I love the scene where Ricki and the stepmom are arguing. It's probably the best scene in the entire movie.
I like her a lot.
Oh, I
McDonald.
I thought she was the best character in the entire movie.
Yeah, she's very good.
But she had maybe like 5, 10, 15 minutes at best screen time.
Well, not even. She doesn't show up till... I mean, she's away for most of the time she's there. That Streep is there.
But it's honestly just a movie biting off far more than it can chew, and not really accomplishing anything it wants to try and set out and do. I leave Ricki and the Flash with the C as well.
I was kind of impressed that she's like, 66 now or something?
Mm-hmm.
She's getting up there, and yet she's able to pull off not only someone who could sing, but kind of as a rock star. It just seems so un-Meryl Streep. That's why it kind of demonstrates the veracity of her performance.
But here's the thing, Joe. I'd say about 70% of the time, it is actually rock songs.
Yeah.
The rest are like pop covers. Like she does Lady Gaga at one point, which was just awkward.
Well, that's another reason her character doesn't make sense.
It's pretty
Their
hardcore.
entire set list is made up of, like, Tom Petty and, like, all these classic rock songs. And then she says, we've had requests to hip it up and be a little more current. So here's a hot number from the day. And so they go into Bad Romance, and this table of, like, young 20-somethings, out on a Saturday night for their drinks, gets up and starts dancing. The dancing in this movie is ridiculous, by the way. Nobody's dancing to these songs in the way that they are. The music is one of the many downfalls of the film, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
It's another thing that doesn't make sense. And then there's a couple instances, Joe, where they actually play almost the whole song. It's like a 3 or 4 minute segment where nothing's really happening but them playing.
It's one of the big issues I had about the resolution. Basically, the finale is like a 3-song set piece.
Yeah, which is also unbelievable in the context of the rest of the movie.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
Yeah, that's a real shame. All right, well, so up next we're going to do Shaun the Sheep, and that is with Justin. Shaun the Sheep Movie, I should say.
Is that what they call it?
That's what it's called, Shaun the Sheep Movie.
With like a colon or?
Nope.
Star Trek Into Darkness all over again.
One of my problems. Okay, go for it.
Bleeding his way to the big screen from a TV show that was originally a spin-off to Aardman classic Wallace and Gromit, Justin Fletcher plays titular Shaun the Sheep, a sheep tired of the humdrum schedule living on a farm with his fellow sheep, the obnoxious pigs, and the watchdog Blitzer, played by John Sparks. Though in an attempt to break out and have a day off doesn't quite go as expected, leaving the farmer, also played by Sparks, with memory loss, it's up to Shaun and his flock to navigate the big city, with some help in unlikely places, and avoid the animal catcher to set things right before anything else can go awry. This has been a summer where we've had heroes come in honestly the most unlikely of places. Literally emotions, taciturn action heroes in Mad Max, and now sheep. But unlike Minions, don't let the no dialogue hype from this movie turn you away. Shaun the Sheep makes use of every ounce of its 85-minute runtime with witty characters and a simple yet fun storyline that's packed with heart. And I really think that allows the audience to encourage paying attention, trying to get all the gags and see how everything's being conveyed to clearly understand what's going on. It's simple, but it's incredibly effective. Though, like most of Aardman's films, the goal is honestly more heart than laughs, which I feel like will leave some maybe a little bit divisive, but I also feel like that's something a lot of mainstream animation companies could learn quite a bit from. And I feel like it's also that component that makes it the most worthwhile. At 85 minutes, the conclusion's fairly abrupt, and the animation's not always its smoothest, but it's a fun family experience that I feel like anyone can have a good time with. I leave Shaun the Sheep Movie with a B+.
Joe?
I thought that it was an interesting and I think very telling film in the sense that you don't really see many movies demonstrate how you can tell animation and its power just by animation itself. I mean, I think the lack of dialogue was interestingly one of the strongest aspects of the film because there was just so much detail, and that's the thing I do love about these films is that you can tell that there is a lot of craft put into it, but there is a lot of heart. And there's also some intelligence in the humor. I found myself laughing quite a bit. And you're right, Justin, the story is simple, but it works. And it flows by pretty well in the short time. You don't really feel too bored with it. Runs pretty well. I actually thought that the characters were pretty fun in themselves. I do feel like I wish there was a little more to it, though, to be honest. But I didn't really have any major issues with the movie, though now that you mention it, the ending was a bit abrupt. Overall, I thought it was very enjoyable. I'm actually a little higher than you. I leave it with a A-.
Well, I have never been a huge fan of the Aardman animation stuff, save for Flushed Away. So I didn't really have any expectations going into this movie, but a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes with over 100 reviews in is pretty hard to ignore. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll be in for a pleasant surprise. And I actually was. It's very appealing. It's got clever jokes and sight gags. And Joe, like you mentioned, some are quite highbrow, but others are not so much. No. I mean, it's a nice kind of balance of both smart humor and stupid, not stupid humor, but, humor that plays to the kiddie crowd. The animation was okay, but there are, good lessons about things here. There's no place like home, sort of tread upon before, obviously. But the dialogue-free thing, I was a little bit torn with. I didn't mind that none of the animals talked, but it did sort of bother me that, when you had two human characters interacting with each other, there could have been some dialogue there rather than just mumbles or groans. Minions, for all of its problems with the minions, not being able to be understood, obviously that movie is sort of held together, I think we all agreed, by the performances of people like Michael Keaton. And, I'm not saying famous people need to voice the acting here, but I wish that they were talking to each other in actual language rather than just grunts. And I understand that probably part of the appeal of the TV show of this is that you can run it in, any country in the world and people get it because there's no dialogue, and I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. But for the big screen adventure, I maybe they could disperse with that. But I'm with you, Joe. It's actually an A- from me. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I did think it was funny. I thought it was funny.
I thought it was pretty funny too.
Actually, no, you didn't laugh?
No, my argument isn't that it wasn't funny. My argument is it's focusing more on the hard component, focusing on family. There's no place like home. Actually, the bigger themes than trying to get in like every last joke, like so many of these mainstream movies like Minions is basically trying to go for the punchline on rapid fire. Mm-hmm. Take your time, work your way to it.
Well, and I think we can all agree that that's what sets Pixar aside from, say, DreamWorks.
Yeah. I agree.
DreamWorks wants to pack as many jokes as they can into a scene, whereas Inside Out had some scenes where there really were no laughs.
No.
But compare that to, I don't know, a Shrek movie, where it's maybe 80% they're trying to throw jokes in your face.
Or something like The Nut Job.
Well, that's why How to Train Your Dragon is so good.
Tons of humor in it.
That's the one DreamWorks example where it is a lot of drama.
Because the best stuff, Pixar's trying to emulate is more timeless. It's not bogged down by like pop culture references and things like that. And you'll have like some...
Did you say The Nut Job, by the way?
That movie. I had to point it out because...
that movie far more attention than it needed.
Well, it's the first thing that came to mind. Or, I don't know.
Freebirds,
the stupid Thanksgiving
Well, that's also another case of film studios gunning far more for the punchline than actually...
And that's a good example of why it doesn't work, because that's all they're focusing on, not the characters, the story, or the message of the movie. Mm-hmm. It's just about, fun and hijinks and just mindless jokes. That's something that these movies don't have.
Which I also feel like is the main reason this is set apart from something like Minions, where our big criticism was the Minions don't have enough development as characters to carry a movie. Mm. This one, you genuinely care about them as it goes along.
I do have a question, though. You mentioned, Dan, you thought that maybe some of the humor characters could have talked, had some dialogue. I actually think that might have enhanced some things, but I am kind of torn with that, though, because that might have disrupted the flow of the rest of the movie and then maybe taken away from the sheep a little bit.
Maybe, but a couple of times they do say actual words. I know everything's saying no dialogue, no dialogue. I'm sorry, but when the guy at the hospital rushes the dog out, he says, hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey.
It was clear. Yeah. Now, is hey, hey, hey pretty much the same in every language? Probably very similar, yeah. Just like if you said no, 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 you'd get the point. Mm-hmm. But that is dialogue, and that didn't take me out of the movie. Except to think, well, I thought this was dialogue-free. I mean, if it wasn't hyped up so much as the dialogue-free movie, I don't think...
There were, occasional...
I don't think it would have mattered.
...words here and there. Actually, to be honest, the humans kind of spoke like Minions did.
They sort of did. They had their own little language of grunts.
And then occasionally, a word would pop up.
Right. This did not do very well. I don't think, the Aardman movies usually take off, but this opened to about half of what the Pirates Band of Misfits did.
Question on that,
and actually. I don't know... What?
Domestically or internationally?
Well, obviously domestically. Internationally, the TV show's a big hit. You know, I don't think... Do they even run the show here in the States?
I think on like BBC or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, but again, that's BBC America.
Is it,
That's like saying, you know, Cheers is a British show because it runs on BBC Two in reruns. I mean,
no, that's a fair statement.
You know, I'm saying it's not on Nickelodeon here.
But I mean, look at it like Tintin. Tintin did not do that well here. Overseas, amazing, which is why it's getting sequels.
I understand, and that's fine.
Eventually,
but I'm largely talking about the American audience because my point was going to be that the no dialogue thing as a quote unquote hook, I think might have turned people away, and that's why you have the human characters interact and talk English or whatever language, and then there's no stigma of like, oh, hey, this is a dialogue-free movie, you guys.
I don't think it's as much of a turnoff as people aren't playing. I mean, we live in a Teletubbies generation.
Yeah, but I don't know if many parents are willing to sit through like an hour-and-a-half movie that they don't think their kids might not be able to pay attention to.
When I was watching it, kids were totally on board with this. I mean, completely invested.
Sure.
I feel like we're not giving Americans enough credit.
But how full was the theater?
It's Shaun the Sheep, as you mentioned, from a BBC show in America.
This is interesting, though, but I did see it with you, Dan, and to be fair, you and I were the ones...
We were laughing the most in our theater.
We were the most entertained in there, and there were plenty of kids there. I mean,
yeah.
I think people were interested, but I don't know if many of the kids were, like, blown away by it.
Right.
From the impression I got in my theater. We were enjoying it the most.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that's one component that might detract ticket buyers.
You know what?
In the U.S.
I think they shouldn't have said that.
Do too.
I think if people had just gone in, oh, it's a kids movie, I think it would have done better, and people might have actually been more surprised by it. I think that might have been a turnoff.
Up next is Dark Places. Joe?
Dark Places is a mystery film directed and written by Gilles Paquet-Brenier. It is based on the novel Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. You guys might remember did an adaptation for another film, Gone Girl, so that's why this is getting some buzz. It stars Charlize Theron in the title role, also Christina Hendricks, Nicholas Hoult, and Chloe Grace Moretz, which surprised me, and Dre DiMatteo makes an appearance as well.
Yes, she does. I knew you'd like that.
I did. Set in a farming town in Kansas, Dark Places follows Libby Day, played by Charlize, the only surviving witness of a horrific massacre that took her mother and sisters. Believing the slaughter to be the work of a satanic cult, Libby testifies in court against her own brother. Then, 25 years later, after the murder, she remains haunted by the gruesome violence of her past when she meets a group of amateur investigators who call themselves the Kill Club. Couldn't believe this is a real thing, but it does seem strangely reflective of reality, I think.
No, I've heard of them.
Yeah, I just can't believe it. Looking to satisfy their morbid curiosity, the group begins their own inquiry about the case, believing Libby's brother is innocent. In order to help them, Libby must unearth painful memories of the event and learn that her past may not be what it seems. This movie really was definitely up my alley. I thought that there was a lot of intrigue here, a very complicated plot with a lot of layers, and I think that Charlize Theron once again gives a great performance. I think everybody in the movie did a pretty good performance, actually. It was very genuine, but at the same time with this air of like noir atmosphere that I really liked. A lot of darkness, obviously. The film doesn't lie to you in its title. There's some dark subject matter here, and it's interesting how it's not as convoluted as Gone Girl. I mean, I know that the directing style was definitely more flashy. I would say it feels like more of a big budget thriller in that sense. This one's definitely more subversive and gritty, earthy. I think that kind of is parallel to the farming nature of the community that it sprung from in the storyline. So I think it might be emulating that a little bit. And it's interesting how it does seem to kind of almost seem slightly realistic despite the twists and turns of it. And it does keep you guessing. I will say that there are some aspects of the plot that I'm not sure worked so well. Not the main plot itself. I think the mystery is pretty well developed there. I thought the flashbacks, for the most part, actually worked with the two different storylines. It was the Kill Club itself, though, was an interesting hook to get you involved in the plot, but I feel like they were almost forced in there. Like you felt like that was going to go somewhere, and it doesn't. Like Holt's character is interesting, but I'm not sure if he was really even that necessary, but it was still good to see him. Things like that. And then towards the end, I felt like it was maybe dragging a little bit. It was losing some of the intrigue, but then the ending came up and sucked me back in again. So the pacing wasn't 100% perfect. Some of the issues I think they could have taken out maybe with the Kill Club. I thought that felt like almost a different movie. But for the most part, though, the mystery was awesome. The performances were great, and I thought it had a really strong punch at the end. I thought the twist was really good. It was very disturbing, but very powerful. I thought the ultimate message and the resolution was actually very satisfying. I leave it with an A-.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely some weird characters here. I'd say almost every character in the movie is at least odd, if not unlikable.
What about Corey Stoll? Don't you like seeing him, though?
Oh, I always love seeing him, but, his character was a bit odd, I think.
Slightly.
Like many in the film. My big issue with it, actually, is that we didn't really learn enough background on Libby. We got, little bits with the flashbacks, but was it enough to make us care about this character? I don't know. I'm also not sure, this is just sort of a plot aside, but I'm not really sure I get the whole part where she survives off donations from people 15 years after the fact. That seemed a bit odd that people would be sending her money and stuff for this thing that happened 15, 20 years ago.
I thought about that, but to be honest, I feel like that happens with some people. You'd be surprised.
Maybe
depends on the true crime.
Yeah.
That really stuck out to me. It's clearly not as tight as Gone Girl. That was in my top 10 of last year. I loved that movie, but I do agree that the mystery element is very compelling here, Joe. And as such, I definitely didn't think it was a huge letdown. I was actually really shocked. I went on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's 24%. Everyone hates this movie but us, apparently. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm with you. It's an A- for me.
Yeah.
Justin, what do you think?
Gillian Flynn has ear to the ground in terms of popular culture. Obviously, the whole cool girl mentality is now a big theory spinning all over the place.
You love that, don't you?
I will still argue cool guy is almost as a part of our culture, if not even more so. Mm-hmm. But
I don't understand any of this.
Remember the cool girl thing in Gone Girl?
The one big monologue from Gone Girl. You don't remember it?
Oh, okay, I understand.
Cool girl was down.
I thought you were saying there was a whole movement. I remember the scene from Gone Girl. Yes.
There is a movement now, apparently.
Okay, well, that's news to me, but I do remember the scene, yeah, okay.
But here she's clearly taking a page from the West Memphis 3, and the results are very, very mixed. It starts out really, really interesting. I was surprisingly on board a lot quicker than I thought it would be. And then as I found myself heading into Act 2 and then the start of the conclusion, really, really going all over the place with predictable twists. I feel like it showed its hands way too quickly and far too many flashback crosscuts. We get it. This character's traumatized. Some of it is compelling, but we don't need nearly as much as this film gives us.
Or my point, give us more in each, not more flashbacks, but more information in the flashbacks.
Or even better yet, you have these assortment of odd characters. Use it to drive exposition out of Theron's character. She's complicated. Mm-hmm. Play that off.
Yes, very.
But I will give it credit. It does get back to being really, really good by the final resolution. The climax is really, really good. Theron's doing a pretty solid job as Libby. Despite the script kind of being unsure of itself at times for me, I did like the Kill Club. I wish they had more.
I did too.
I wish they were more involved in the storyline.
They kind of disappear. That was my problem. What were they doing?
They're there, and then they basically become a cameo for the rest of the story. Mm-hmm. It's better than I thought it was going to be, but it's far from Gone Girl. I leave with a B-.
That's not too bad.
Why didn't you think it was going to be good?
The early buzz was underwhelming. I felt like after Gone Girl, there was already a pretty high expectation.
That's what I thought it was, honestly, because Gone Girl was so big, people had it to that level they were expecting. Because it's very different director.
Oh, it's an incredibly different story.
Different story, yeah. So it wasn't Gone Girl. The mystery was there. The strong female character was there. But, it's other than that, it's a very different story.
I thought the mystery, though, was pretty good. I did like the Kill Club. Mm-hmm. I could have seen more with them, for sure.
Definitely.
But, I think it was kind of a good hook to get her into the situation.
I thought we knew a lot about her character that you could kind of see based upon her actions and reactions, mostly because of the performance. But I do agree that...
But what got her there?
That we don't really know, about the journey. We know, obviously, the trauma. Mm-hmm. We know a little bit based on her monologue. But other than that, we don't know. She mentions a couple little things about what she did, but she said she had just enough to get by to do nothing. You did nothing for all those years?
Right.
I'm sure that she had some kind of life, so she doesn't trust people, obviously, which makes sense.
Well, I felt like by that line she meant, had enough to get by, obviously a roof over her head.
Yeah, she didn't really do anything with her life. I got the line, I understand that.
Never worked.
No.
I really liked the twist, by the way, of what actually happened. I thought
I did too.
Was really awesome, and I liked how they kind of tied it in with something you hear earlier, which I thought was just kind of a throwaway thing. Mm-hmm. I liked that.
Also, I'm glad you brought up those moments, though. How'd you guys feel about the main flashbacks? Because I got where they were going with them, but I wish they had been shot better. Hated the cheap cameras they were using.
The first couple ones they did that I thought it looked pretty bad. I think what they were going for, though, was kind of like that grainy 80s like camera.
That's sort of what I chalked it up to, sort of like how in Love and Mercy, whenever we transitioned to the 60s, Brian Wilson, it was, shot on like those 8mm cameras, whatever.
To be fair, though, Justin, they don't follow through with it. They give up on that after like the first couple times.
Yeah, that didn't occur to me, but you're right. They sort of do give up on that motif.
I guess it was to keep it fuzzy, like her memory, when they were being attacked. I think that's what they were going for. I don't like it either, but I think that's what the point was.
It was good in theory, but I just wish they were shot better.
Yeah,
because it's where the budget of this movie really, really shows painfully.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Well, finally, in our new releases, we have the home media moment Serena. This takes place in North Carolina during the Great Depression, and in it, Bradley Cooper stars as George Pemberton, who owns a failing lumber business, when he meets Serena, played by Jennifer Lawrence, a transplant from Colorado, who catches his eye. The two marry, and George brings her into the business, which is met with a chilly response from the other men in the business. Ooh. Deadly accidents start happening to men on the job, and George's shady business dealings come to light. His life continues a downward spiral as Serena suffers a miscarriage, and his child from another woman and that other woman end up murdered. Now, this is the third team-up we've seen of Lawrence and Cooper, and it's the only one without director David O. Russell, and they'll do it again under Russell with Joy this Christmas. But here it's Suzanne Bier at the helm, and it suffers for it. Not that the script isn't dull, but also the locale is bland too, and Bier directed the fantastic Oscar-winning film In a Better World, which takes place at a refugee camp, and that popped way more than this ever does cinematography-wise, so you can't really blame that on the script. The two leads here have next to no chemistry, which we've seen previously is far from the case, and Lawrence also gives one of her least interesting performances here for a character that's quite complicated. So I have to put Bier on the chopping block for all of that as well. In addition to the dull script, Serena gets a C- from me. Justin?
I feel like this is another great case of a super promising idea with a ton of promising talent, and it just doesn't commit. It's an ugly film with a storyline that just doesn't make that much sense, and honestly, I never felt like it knew where it wanted to throw this complete downward spiral of a relationship. You're right. I mean, they don't have that much chemistry, which is a complete shocker.
Right.
Honestly, at this point, it's kind of bugging me that they just insist on working together in every third movie that they're on.
Oh, not me. I love it. Give me more. Just not this piece of garbage. Give me more David O. Russell movies with them.
But the storyline is really just not that compelling. It's dull, and it doesn't seem to have any idea what it wants to be. This dark, biting character study about falling out of love and dealing with personal demons, or being this very strange psychological thriller. It's tonally all over the place. Its characters are all over the place. It's just a very, very mixed bag. I leave Serena with a C.
Joe?
Well, I don't think I can add too much to this, guys. I mean, the thing that did surprise me, though, was I thought one of the big hooks of the movie was you got to see Cooper and Lawrence together again, and this time it doesn't really work. So no. I guess that must have something to do with the direction. I mean, I guess they're so used to working with Russell, and he's got a certain chemistry with them, and, some directors have their actors, and they're basically his. And I think that I agree. They should probably have more, honestly, with them, because it seems to be a working formula. But the best thing about the movie for me, being a period piece, I thought the costumes were good. I thought that the 1920s genre definitely kind of fit well for the atmosphere. I thought the locale was all right. I mean, I thought it was pretty, but, that might be neither here nor there. The dialogue was okay. I thought there was definitely some potential for the storyline. I thought that there was some possible intrigue here. The problem is, though, it doesn't really commit to anything, and it kind of just labors. The biggest fall the movie has is that it's boring. I found it incredibly boring.
Me too.
I was struggle to get through. There just wasn't really that much going on, and really it just seemed like it was laborious to get through. But I thought it looked okay. I thought some of the performances were okay, and there were some good ideas. On the whole, though, I'm actually a little below you, Dan. I leave it with a D+.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's very dull. And would you guys agree? I mean, I think that Lawrence's character is, or could be at least, complicated and,
Oh, she's incredibly complicated.
But why? But then why is she so boring?
Because the storyline doesn't know what it wants to be. If it was even remotely consistent, we could get that.
Yeah, but Lawrence is such a good actress. I think even with a less than stellar script, we saw it with Meryl Streep and Ricki and the Flash, for Pete's sake. Why can't she? I don't blame Lawrence for it. Like I said, I blame the director, but.
Well, her performance didn't really seem like she was that invested, which is kind of on both sides.
Hey, Lawrence still did House at the End of the Street, so...
Yeah, and she was better in that than this.
I don't agree, but...
Well, you failed that movie, though, or whatever.
I
gave
did
it
fail
like a
that
C-.
movie. It was a miserable movie, but...
I gave it a C-, same as this.
I don't think she's the best actress ever personally, so,
I like her a lot.
I know,
Best ever, no, but I mean, in terms of, best young talent, she's definitely top tier.
She's got some talent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I just think that, she's not perfect. Everybody gives in a bad performance. This just wasn't a great one. And, that might have something to do with the direction of the script, but I never felt like the leads were fully committed to what they didn't know what they were supposed to do.
No, that's probably true.
So that's probably where the problem lies.
I mean, the script didn't allow them, I guess, to
have much
understand
flexibility.
Their characters.
I felt like they could have definitely spread their wings more. I just felt like they were restrained. She's playing a restrained character that didn't know what she wanted, so that comes off as being a character that doesn't look like it's fleshed out from our perspective. So
and then makes a bunch of strange choices that comes out of nowhere.
I just feel like something was really just lost in translation on the process.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those that the script might have actually been really, really good, but the director had no idea how to bring it to the screen, so we just got a mishmash in final execution.
Yeah, maybe. I do want to ask you, though, Justin.
Please.
So, back in the studio days, you had, Hepburn and Tracy and, Rogers and Astaire. Why don't you want to see more movies with the two of these people? I mean, Hanks and Meg Ryan did a bunch of movies together as well in the 90s.
It's true.
Because I feel like we're getting used to their shtick. They're in a movie together. They obviously have chemistry. They play off each other. We're back to square one. It's fun. Silver Linings Playbook. No one knew what to expect. It could have been really, really great chemistry. It could have been non-existent whatsoever. But it came together and it was awesome.
So why not do that more?
Because it's expected now. It's just going to become... It's kind of like why we keep getting 8,000 Transformers movies. We know what to expect now. There's explosions.
People go see them, though.
Right, but Transformers movies are terrible. Silver Linings Playbook's great and their chemistry's great. So why not make more movies where there's good chemistry? And for the record... in American Hustle, they weren't really in that many scenes together.
It was more of a
It was
Bale.
more of Bale and her, and then him and Amy Adams, and him and Bale. And I don't know how many scenes they're going to be together in this Joy movie coming out, but, I mean, really, we've only seen them do the whole romantic thing twice.
Well,
Silver Linings Playbook and then
Serena.
this mess.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So, I'm totally all for seeing them together. I like that sort of old studio method of... I mean, I don't agree with let's get the stars under contracts and only do movies for us. But, I mean, Judy Garland and, Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney, yeah.
When they're not in blackface, I love it.
No, there are instances where certain actors and actresses work together in different films. It's happened before, even recently.
No, I'm okay with that. But if you're gonna collaborate on that scale, at least spread it out so we can get used to seeing their talent on this in other projects.
If these were the only movies they were doing, I would agree. But, I mean, Jennifer Lawrence, obviously, she's, done all the Hunger Games movies as well, and some other projects. Bradley Cooper's been in plenty of things, American Sniper, Hangover movies. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not like these are the only movies they're doing.
No, but it's always hyped as oh, yes, it's the Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence movie.
Well, if it sells tickets.
Yeah.
All right, well, before we move into our final triple feature of older films, let's talk about this Mortal Kombat movie that I guess they're working on. Justin, what do you know about that?
Well, it was announced earlier this week that they are, in fact, trying to reboot the Mortal Kombat movie franchise. And director James Wan, most probably know him as the Saw director, and then this year's Fury 7 is trying to get that underway as director. Personally, my biggest issue with Wan is I think he's an incredibly talented director. I thought he was well above the quality of what any of the Fast and the Furious movies needed. But hey, if he's the one leading the charge, who am I to tell him no? My biggest issue is I never really felt like Mortal Kombat had that much of an engrossing story to involve a movie. The first one had some great fight scenes, and then we had 2, which is one of the worst movies ever made.
Well, Justin, let me ask you, how many of the games have you played?
Probably 2. Another one's watching clips on YouTube here and there. I mean, I know there is a story of sorts, but the question being, can that storyline translate to screen? which I feel like is a big problem with video game adaptations. My counter argument on that same statement would be, I feel like a lot of the ones that would make great movies, like The Last of Us, BioShock, and BioShock Infinite, would make great movies. But we seem to be struggling getting those out. I feel like Assassin's Creed will turn the tide, but
We'll see.
But yes, we will in fact see. I'm curious to see what it would be like with an update. I mean, I know the cult following is definitely alive and well. There's been a lot of really good fan films. So I feel like it's very, very up in the air. I'd be curious to see what he does with it.
I've never seen any of the movies or played any of the games. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
James Wan's okay. I saw the first Saw movie. That was
But you love
very
The Conjuring.
well directed. Yeah, I do love The Conjuring. I thought Furious 7 was, not the best directed. But I've never seen a good video game movie. I've heard the first Silent Hill's okay.
It's not.
Okay, but Joe would disagree even with that statement. Have you ever seen a good video game movie, Joe?
The closest thing to a good video game movie, the general consensus, was the first Mortal Kombat movie.
Okay.
Not saying it's a great
Wow.
movie, but the general consensus is that's the best one. So if they're going to try and redo this, not a bad place to start, because the following is kept it alive. I admit it's a great guilty pleasure. I could put it on. Maybe I'll run it sometime. It's a fun movie. There's enough. Well, the cool thing about the Mortal Kombat movie is it actually did something that a lot of video game movies afterwards have not done, and previously the Super Mario Bros. Movie failed at, was it actually took something, the original Mortal Kombat game basically had no storyline, and actually added something.
Okay.
It was cheesy. There wasn't much. But you know what? Like the characters, there's a bad guy, some fights, some cheesy effects. Enough to keep you occupied for 90 minutes. Fun popcorn movie. So if they can up the blood and gore and make it more engrossing and epic, and hey, Mortal Kombat, you're right, Justin, it doesn't have the most engrossing, but there's enough there to build a big fan base and keep the franchise going on for like 20 games. So
you're definitely of the opinion that if they do it, they shouldn't go back to their PG-13 rating. They should go straight up R.
No. If you're gonna do a Mortal Kombat movie,
Can't get
what's it known for?
I think most video game movies of the last, say, 15 years go for that R.
If you're gonna go for a more
You know?
mature audience, like a lot of these games are, with
Right.
more mature, engrossing storylines anyway, might as well.
Right.
Adults are playing video games all the time now. It's not just little kids.
Now, if you're going to do a kid-friendly movie
Obviously,
based on a game, do Legend of Zelda or something.
yeah,
Where there's really endless possibilities.
big world, big story,
Big world, right.
So you're right. And the interesting thing is, though, about the video game adaptions, though, is that it seems like a lot of them, they're picking franchises that don't have the best stories.
I completely agree.
I guess they're going by what's most popular. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Doom was really
Right.
influential. Yeah, but
That movie
But there was no
awful.
story.
but there was a guy shooting demons on Mars. That's literally the plot of the 1993 PC game. There wasn't much to do back then, So I mean, it doesn't mean there's nothing there. But even newer Doom games, you just shoot the monsters. I mean, that's the prime hook.
Right.
I mean, as I went along, there was more and more of a story, but
Even so, it wasn't exactly the most mind blowing.
well, now.
But I'm not saying that there's no potential. I'm just saying if they're gonna do it,
Do it well.
Do it well. Research your stuff. Work at the games. Some of the, the cinema stuff is pretty good in there. So
Don't make Super Mario Brothers just because you can.
no, I mean that's a perfect example. I mean we're just gonna make up a story that makes no sense and it's not even reminiscent of the game. Like literally, you watch the Super Mario Brothers movie and it doesn't even look like Mario half the time. So what's the point?
Yeah. All right, well, let's do our triple feature here of older films. We have an Oscar nominee called The Bad and the Beautiful, which actually won a bunch of Oscars. We have a listener's choice old classic. But first up is our final new classic. We decided sort of to end this segment just because it's been now 2 years we've been doing the show. And the qualifier for new classic was it's a film within the last 2 years that at least two of the three of us have given a positive grade to. However, now that we're at the 2-year mark, everything that we would bring to the table for New Classic is something that has been reviewed on the show already. So just to sort of attempt to keep the time of the show close to an hour here. Again, this week that won't be happening, just like last week, but we try. So for the final one, we brought something to the table that was a bit divisive the first time around, and that is $1 Million Arm. Joe, let's hear about it.
I thought the original title was better myself.
$1 Million Ham?
Yeah, I'm telling you, like that's probably at least what he got paid for it.
I would say.
Now, $1 Million Arm is a 2014 American biographical sports drama film from Disney, directed by Greg Gillespie, from a screenplay written by Tom McCarthy. The film is based on the true story of the baseball pitchers, Rinku Singh and Dinesh Patel, who were discovered by sports agent J.B. Bernstein after winning a reality show competition. Now, the film stars John Hamm as Bernstein, Bill Paxton as the pitching coach Tom House, Suraj Sharma as Singh, Madar Mittal as Patel, and Alan Arkin doing his typical shtick. I think that, it's a pretty standard Disney sports drama. I think it's a lot of the same tropes we see. There's some heartwarming moments. I think that the fact that it is based on a true story adds a little more intrigue. I think the characters are fairly likable for the most part. And I think that it kind of progresses the way it should. Kind of does everything it's supposed to do. The performances are okay. I think John Hamm, of course, does a good job, as he usually does. But there are a couple little things that bothered me the second time around. I thought that it was pandering a little too much on the whole Indian aspect. I knew there was something the first time, but I was looking a little more carefully for some details. There is some stuff in here that's it's pretty much bordering on racism, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it is there, and it does kind of bug me. There's something that actually Lake Bell says when they're having dinner one time she actually does an accent, and I was just like, that should not happen, and everyone's okay with it. So there were some little moments like there that were a little bit questionable, and I do think that John Hamm's character, I'm not entirely sure how much he progresses, because it's basically like he has to go out there and learn about something by teaching these kids and bringing them out of this poor area and giving them stardom.
Does he?
Which he does. He does succeed in doing, but I'm not really sure what the actual progression for his character was, because unfortunately, I realized that from the beginning of the film to the end, he doesn't really change that much. There are certain scenes that imply that he should be changing, but it seemed more like it was because Lake Bell's character was kind of almost as if she was enticing him with certain rewards for good behavior, not appreciate these people for who they are. So I thought that his character was not quite as well developed as he could be. But despite that, like I said, I thought the performances were good. The main story is decent. It follows all the right punches, and I think the ultimate goal is still heartwarming and entertaining enough. I leave it with a B-.
Okay. Yeah, I think him is very, very likable.
Yeah.
In this movie and in pretty much everything.
Except Mad Men.
Well, I guess he's supposed to be a jerk as Don Draper. I've never seen Mad Men, so I'll take everyone's word for that.
He's not that bad.
But, I mean, he's a charismatic person. Mm-hmm. When he shows up on 30 Rock, when he does SNL, when he does whatever, he's a very likable person. He's likable here as well. He has good chemistry, I think, both with the Indian boys and with Lake Bell. And to that end, we've been talking a lot this summer about romances as side stories. Mm-hmm. Do we really need them? I actually think here is one where it does not seem forced. It seems natural. It seems like his character does need sort of a push in that direction, like you said, Joe, that he was trying to be a better person or whatever. Whether that comes to fruition, I guess, is a bit questionable.
By the film,
but
it's a little iffy.
It's a bit iffy. But I do think it's a fun B story, and I didn't mind it. The boys from India also have good rapport with each other. You do believe that they're buddies and that, they really are sort of, lost in the world that they're in now.
Fall in love with pizza, though.
They love some pizza, much like the Ninja Turtles and many other people who are out of their element sometimes. I agree, though. It certainly does get bogged down with the classic Disney sports tropes. Mm-hmm. A story that's basically a PG version of Jerry Maguire in some aspects. And it does become overly long, about like an hour and 50 minutes in. Mm. Arkin, though, gives the best performance I've seen from him probably since Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah.
Can't say that too often.
It's true.
I think it's good. I gave it, I believe, a B- originally. I'm going to stick to that for now. But it isn't that far off from like McFarlane, which, is, for you and I, Joe, clearly the better movie.
I think definitely, yeah.
But, I think it does have a lot of good things working for it. I think if maybe they trimmed it down by 15 minutes, I'd give it that B. Mm. But it does get a little bit long in the tooth. Justin, how about for you?
A little bit.
All right, I gave you it was long in the tooth, Justin.
Yeah. 2 years of watching some of the better new releases, and this mediocre, borderline racist film is the sad note we choose to end on. The general concept, albeit, as Dan mentioned, Jerry Maguire on steroids, is noble, and the story of these two players is compelling, but here's the biggest problem. The completely unlikable narcissist of a main character remains a selfish narcissist. we're supposed to believe that he's changing, but he's not. And I think the one aspect of it is probably should be sending feminists up in arms. Admittedly, for being a selfish narcissist, Ham plays him very well. You can definitely tell he's putting his Mad Men chops to work here. But even when we're supposed to believe he's grown, he hasn't. And that even comes into play when we have the immensely stereotypical America's glorious land of opportunity versus any other nation, horrible, corrupt, garbage land, which is completely insulting to the entire Indian film industry and just India in general. The two Indian actors, Suraj Sharma, obviously from Life of Pi, and his co-star, really good camaraderie.
Yeah.
And I do give Disney credit for not making them constantly have to talk in English and rather rely on subtitles. I think it's a bold move.
Yeah.
Do I think it's going to translate well for kids? I don't know, but
It isn't really for kids, though.
It isn't really a kids movie, though, even though it's Disney. It's just, frankly, a mediocre by-the-numbers sports film that has more than a handful of problems and runs on way too long. I stand on my original C.
Tell me, Justin, a Disney sports movie from the last, I'm going to say...
Have to say after.
I'll go 15 years even.
Remember the Titans. Was that 99?
That was 2000, I believe.
Aha, he can say it.
The last 14 years of Disney sports movies. Because honestly, they're all kind of the same in a lot of regards.
Hey, Justin,
Cool Runnings, and I mean...
Was The Rookie?
I never saw The Rookie.
Oh, well, I like The Rookie, but...
Yeah.
Okay, well...
That's the one problem with the argument, Dan, is... Yes, 14 years is a long time span, but it's not like Disney's turning them out every year. Remember the Titans, Miracle...
The Mighty Ducks.
Sure, the Mighty Ducks. That was 90s, but... Miracle, The Rookie, McFarland...
What are some other ones?
And $1 Million Arm. If there's any others, I'm sorry, they're not coming to mind. The Shia LaBeouf one, I guess, or Glory Road. I never saw either of those either, but...
What's the Shia LaBeouf? Oh, The Greatest Game Ever Told? Or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one.
So there you go. I don't know. I mean, these are uplifting movies, I feel like. I know you have a lot of problems with McFarlane, too, which we've talked about.
Are they just too cheesy for you, Justin? Is that what it is? They are kind of that Disney camp that...
Well, McFarlane was one of those, like, it had a couple really awesome opportunities to go to Remember the Titans level of, like, exploring deeper themes, but then just kept skirting around the edges for the sake of, we're Disney, we're family entertainment, way too scary. No, Remember the Titans went there fearlessly.
Not to hardball on the McFarlane thing again, though, but if I remember correctly, there was a scene where a kid was considering, like, committing suicide. It's pretty dark for a Disney movie.
And again, skirt across the edges.
I think they said enough with that scene they need to. He kept him from committing suicide.
I think it was fine the way it was.
I mean, to be fair, though, Justin, it was a very different story, too.
Agreed.
So that might not be the best comparison.
It's fairly apples and oranges, but...
But all right, so $1 Million Arm, there is no real central, like, hard-hitting drama like McFarland, being in the gangster, period, or Remember the Titans. I mean, it's just a story about these kids coming to America to live the American dream, which apparently is offensive to you, but that is what happened. I mean, it's based on a true story.
I didn't know people from India didn't grasp the concept of escalators or elevators.
That was kind of funny, actually.
Maybe they don't. They probably don't have escalators there. Their buildings are not very tall.
Well, my argument when we were watching it was I thought that maybe it's possible these kids were from a village. Maybe they never went to the big city. It's possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a big country.
Slim.
You don't know. There are a lot of countries where people live in their general villages and rarely leave. I mean, it's true. So I thought it's possible. I think it was played up for laughs maybe in the wrong way.
A little bit.
I don't know.
See, I don't find that racist.
I find the fact that they're reducing an entire population to, welcome to India, where we have to manipulate the entire system to get everything that we want. We have to literally steal our own equipment. And
that was
the only way of getting a better life is to go to America.
That was kind of racist.
I'm sorry, Dan. That is really, really racist.
I'll back him up there. That was
all right.
It's racist.
It's racist then. I don't know. You shout racist a lot, Justin. You're the boy who cried racist. So when you say it, I automatically think, is it racist? I don't know. Maybe this is more racist than some.
You don't think that...
I think the Lake Bell impression is probably more racist.
That was the most blatantly racist.
Than maybe anything else that happens in India.
I don't know how that happened in the movie. I don't know how
I don't either.
Like somebody was like, you know what, this is perfect for Disney. Let's
it's fine. Yeah.
That was good. I liked that part. All right. Well, there it is. Final new classic.
Yep.
It was either that or The Equalizer. But The Equalizer was a little too new. So.
Too new.
Plus, we just did Fuqua 2 weeks ago with Southpaw, so...
It's true.
Didn't want to double dip there, but...
Don't wait till it's hit again.
Oh, it definitely will. I know you're bringing it to Old Classic.
For Equalizer 2, I'll bring it.
As soon as the 2-year mark hits and it's eligible, you'll bring it.
That's right.
All right, so speaking of Old Classic, let's move into that now. We have a listener's choice this week, and that is from listener Brett. That is Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. This is a 2003 film directed and co-starring George Clooney, and based on the memoir of a game show creator and supposed CIA assassin, Chuck Barris, who created such lowbrow but fun fare as The Dating Game, The Newlywed Game, and The Gong Show. Barris is portrayed by Sam Rockwell. Drew Barrymore and Julia Roberts co-star with the adapted screenplay by Charlie Kaufman of Being John Malkovich and adaptation fame. This was a great choice for Old Classic Listener's Choice, as it's one I've always wanted to get to. I'm an avid game show enthusiast, and the larger-than-life Barris story, true or not, has always intrigued me. Confessions did not disappoint me in this regard. Rockwell gives a fantastic take on the man. No easy feat for those of us used to seeing him every afternoon on The Gong Show. He's a very recognizable figure. He captures his on-air zest and craziness while digging deeper into the man's psyche. It's got some notes of dark comedy, much like a similar film, Catch Me If You Can, but unlike that movie, Confessions could almost come off like a parody at times, because everything is based on Barris's quote-unquote experiences, but the forever question is, did they even happen? Only Barris knows for sure, and that's half the fun of this movie. Of course, for me, I wanted to see way more with the behind-the-scenes network stuff, his interactions with the game shows, and a little bit less of the CIA story, but of course that's my own personal taste. Clooney and Kaufman actually do find a really good 50-50 balance between the two. Now, I really would have enjoyed 2 movies here, one based on each of Barris's lives. I also don't think Clooney is as sure-footed as he would be just a few years later with Good Night and Good Luck behind the camera. That is by far his greatest directing achievement, but I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's an A- from me. Justin?
Clooney, the director side of him anyways, has 2 modes. The side that's trying to make an interesting point, such as with the Ides of March, and to some extent the Monuments Men, even though that was a glorious disappointment, and the other essentially trying to be a copycat of the Coen brothers. Confession falls into the latter. Rockwell's very charismatic as a lead, as is his cast, telling a very, very strange story, but the film has one major pitfall. It's all completely pointless. Now, I'll admit that even Charlie Kaufman actually said in a later interview that Clooney essentially slaughtered his script. But here's the thing. Doesn't matter that much if Barris was a hitman, which is completely bonkers. Not really. Does it matter that much if Barris was just crazy, which is probably more likely? Not really. It's just a walking conspiracy theory that Clooney wants us to be engaged in and try to discover for ourselves when in all actuality, we honestly don't have any reason to. It's a great performance from Rockwell, I'll give him that, and it has some very compelling moments, particularly when we're in the game show segments. I never heard of the Gong Show before this movie, so seeing it in actual play
I told you
awesome.
I told you about the Gong Show before, I believe.
It's good in segments. I like it as a character study. I don't like it as a dark comedy whatsoever. I leave it with a B-.
I wonder how any knowledge of any of the game shows would have affected you, because I think anybody seeing this movie in 2003, obviously, at the time you were a little young for it.
A little bit.
Anybody seeing this movie in 2003, I think, would be well versed in all of the game show stuff. I mean, he had some of the scandalous, the most scandalous stuff on TV at the time. To me, obviously, that's why it was the really exciting part of the movie. But I wonder how that would have affected your enjoyment of the film. Maybe not your grade per se, but knowing all of that stuff ahead of time.
I'm essentially on board with you.
I
thought the game show stuff was the most compelling. It reminded me a lot of Quiz Show back in the 90s.
Yeah, all right, that's true. I guess I never watched the $64,000 Question, and I enjoyed that movie. All right, Joe.
Well, I think once again we see that Sam Rockwell is a very versatile actor, and he gives a lot of great performances. I think this is one of his better ones, actually. He gets really ingrained in this character, and I think he's just so charismatic to watch him on screen. I think the story is interesting. I didn't really know a whole lot about this man, but I did think that from a historical context it was interesting. I thought the CIA stuff was intriguing. I'm not sure, though, how much it was balanced between these two kind of intriguing storylines and the dark comedy. Because I think some of the dark comedy worked, and others I thought it was a little bit off, honestly. So I think that if there were some issues with the directing and the script, it's quite possible. Some things were a bit uneven there. I do kind of wish that there was actually a little more of the CIA stuff. To be honest,
I figured that's where you wanted to see more.
Because I found that stuff very intriguing. The game show stuff was cool too, but I do agree. I think it was about as balanced as it should be. But I don't know if the dark comedy thing totally sold me. I actually thought that some of the more dramatic aspects of the story were very good, at least from the performance. So, I don't know. I think that it was sort of a mixed bag. It's mostly carried, though, by this really intriguing idea that does keep you interested. And Rockwell, once again, gives a great performance. I'm kind of in between you guys. Leave it with a B.
Okay. Yeah, Rockwell's great here. You've obviously heard of The Gong Show, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was the man that pushed all the envelopes on, daytime game shows, really, back in the day. So for me, like I said, I mean, I wouldn't have minded seeing two different movies, because I think each story had more that we could have gone to. So, Justin, you didn't really like necessarily even the CIA aspect of it, just because
it's pointless.
It's pointless, you said?
I think both angles that it's trying to play are more or less redundant.
When you say both angles, what do you mean?
Like, is he crazy, or did all this happen? It's the main reason.
Oh, okay.
David O. Russell was originally attached to the Rectus, and he said, there's nothing going on in this movie other than Chuck Barris acts like a jerk, sleeps with people, and that's about it.
I suppose that's true, but why does that make it pointless? He's still a character that's very intriguing.
If you go that route, I mean, you could say that, like, a lot of the storylines where there's something that might not necessarily be the reality doesn't matter, when there are many cases where it does.
What do you mean?
Like, there are a lot of films where, there's the classic "it was all a dream" thing. Now, granted, that's been overdone a lot. But
Jacob's Ladder.
But does everything in Jacob's Ladder that happened previously make the film pointless?
To a lot of people, yes.
Not to me, though. I think that if you have a compelling enough story, it might be telling another point. And a lot of people like Jacob's Ladder. I don't know what you're talking about every time you bring that up.
Yeah, I never heard people didn't like it.
It's a cult classic. I mean, yes, people have issues with the ending. Do you know the ending?
I guess it's all a dream. I know it now.
More or less, yeah.
I mean, that's basically
what he just said. That's not a major spoiler.
That's
whatever.
That's not even really it. So,
right.
Not a total spoiler. But the point is, sometimes you can pull off things like that, honestly. If one character tells a story from a certain perspective, and it's not really what happened, does that mean it's pointless? No, it's their perspective. There are many ways to tell.
Well, here's how I would have at least spun it, so maybe it doesn't necessarily avoid being pointless, but at least be more compelling. Sell up the CIA angle so there can at least be some degree of compelling evidence that I could buy into it.
Well, I think that's what Dan's saying, is that both storylines could have used more to flesh them out.
And I agree with that, but I feel like all it really focuses on more heavily is just he's crazy. And if you're going to do that, then don't even bother with the whole CIA section, because that's redundant to what you're trying to accomplish.
But that's really his whole point, is that if that is the insanity part, you kind of need that, because that's showing his mental issues. So you kind of do need it, though. I understand what you're saying, but if you're having this factual storyline and then what's going on in his mind as this fiction, but that's part of who he is, I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the movie, right?
Right,
so,
exactly.
So confessions of a guy who's kind of a little bit unstable, So
well, and it is all based on his own autobiography. It's a pretty fair representation of that.
Obviously, this is a big part of his life, because everyone has a different angle to play with it, and clearly Clooney is intrigued to some extent about that. Play it up. Make audiences question it. I liken it to Total Recall. You can make almost an equally compelling case that it's all just a gigantic simulation as you could that it's all real.
And would that make everything pointless in the movie if it was all simulation?
No, because you can honestly argue both points. In Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, You really can't.
From his perspective, he could.
Yeah, from his perspective, I think you can.
How?
It's what he thinks. It's
I
what he
don't-
believes.
Because that's what he...
Sees himself as.
Yeah, that's what
But
he
here's
is
the thing:
presenting.
we're not in his head the entire movie.
I mean, again, it's based on his autobiography, so everything's sort of from his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The whole movie is from his perspective.
You kind of have to take that into account.
But you're still in charge of making an adaptation, so therefore you have to find a way to sell it.
Look, I agree with you that Clooney's directing is probably the worst aspect of the film.
It's a little mishy. Yeah.
That's what I said. I mean, it's not that it's not good, but it's not
Amazing.
It's not amazing. It's not Good Night and Good Luck, which I know neither of you have seen, but it's great. Well, that is our listener's choice for the month. Obviously, some differing opinions on that one, and we'll get another listener's choice next month. So let us know what you think for that, and that is at Film Fanatics with an exclamation point on Facebook, or you can tweet us at Film Fanatics Pod. Our final movie is the Oscar A to Z, and that is the 1952 film The Bad and the Beautiful. It had 6 nominations and actually won 5 of those: art direction, cinematography, costume design, adapted screenplay, and supporting actress for Gloria Graham, who only logged 9 minutes of screen time. The only nomination it did not win was for Best Actor, which was Kirk Douglas, believe it or not. So, Justin, let's hear about The Bad and the Beautiful.
Kirk Douglas plays Jonathan Shields, a ruthless yet successful film producer who attributed to the success of actress Georgia Lorson, played by Lana Turner, director Fred Amiel, played by Barry Sullivan, and screenwriter James Bartlow, played by Dick Powell, all of whom will not even speak to the man in present day. Told through flashback from all three, The Bad and the Beautiful paints the rise and fall of Shields' career through these individuals, ultimately painting a portrait of a man willing to manipulate anyone and everyone to get to the full height of fame. Making a film about the dark side of Hollywood is gutsy in any era. In the 50s, it's almost unheard of. So I really have to hand it to director Vincente Minnelli, who also did An American in Paris back when we were hitting the A's, to craft a gorgeously shot and edited film featuring one of the best performances of Kirk Douglas I have ever seen. Really good stuff. Goes above and beyond what I would ever expect from this era in filmmaking. I do think it does run a bit too long, but I feel like the commentary is razor sharp, the performance is more than impressive, and I think it still holds up in today's Hollywood status of corruption, studio involvement, interference. What does it take to truly make a movie? How far are you willing to sacrifice your morals to become famous? There's a lot of really powerful stuff here, and I think it's an incredibly poignant and insightful film. Do I think that we're supposed to like the main characters? Not necessarily, but I really do like how they elaborate through each character. I think that adds a whole new perspective. I think it's definitely one of the first main pleasant surprises that we've had in the B's, and I leave with an A.
Joe?
Well, I do agree, Justin. There's a lot of good commentary here. I thought that there were some great performances. I think this might be the first Kirk Douglas movie I've seen.
Spartacus?
No, I actually never saw Spartacus. Yeah, so I actually thought this was a pretty good start for him. I liked him a lot in this. I thought that the leads were all very good. I thought there definitely was, like I said, a lot of good commentary. I did like how the plot was very layered. There was a lot going on. Definitely very timely for sure. And I think foreshadowing a lot of different issues that I think a lot of different actors and producers would want to discuss regarding the behind-the-scenes issues. And it did feel very, very believable, and you felt like you wanted to actually see these characters kind of succeed, even though they weren't always the most likable. So they were believable. They were human enough. I do think that it was a bit long, though. I'm not sure if there was enough to sustain my interest throughout the whole movie, but on the whole, I would give it some credit. I leave it with a B+.
Yeah, I think this is my first Kirk Douglas film as well. I'm surprised that he didn't win the acting award here. I thought he did a great job. I was surprised that Lana Turner wasn't even nominated. I thought she gave a great performance as well. Mm-hmm. And I do like that it told this story in the simultaneous vignettes. Seems very ahead of its time. And it was also nice to see Minnelli, who's the father of Liza Minnelli, ex-husband of Judy Garland, stepping out from that comfort zone of the musicals. Justin mentioned An American in Paris. He also did Meet Me in St. Louis and some other things, to do this original, dramatic, biting piece about Hollywood. That being said, though, I don't necessarily agree, Justin, that it holds up as well as it did back then. We get so many pieces now about the industry and Hollywood and everything. I mean, you guys both had Birdman at your number one last year. I'm not quite sure if it comes off as biting as it did back in the day. It comes off a bit soapy, to be honest, which is a little bit disappointing.
You don't think Hollywood's soapy?
I mean, I do, but I think there's some over-exaggerations here.
American Sweethearts.
Yes, America's Sweethearts. Well, that's a good movie, actually.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Similar.
So I'll let you have that one.
So I'm actually in between you guys. I give it an A-. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, Justin. I'm just saying it does come across, watching it in 2015, as a little bit soapy.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's a complete reflection of today's era, but I'm saying a lot of the things that they talk about are still very prominent in terms of what's wrong with Hollywood today. Studio involvement, people not willing to play ball, corruption.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think for the time, it was probably very biting.
I'm sure it was. I was just speaking to Justin's comment that it holds up today as well as it did back then. I don't necessarily
Some
agree
of the
with that.
themes do, I guess.
Yeah, oh, of course. I mean,
I'm
corruption
not
of the
gonna,
industry, absolutely.
I mean, I'm not going to pretend that the apartment 100% holds up, but thematically it does brilliantly. And that's essentially the same case I'm making in this regard.
All right, well, it was a good movie, though. I don't agree it was the first surprise, though. Joe and I like The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer
I like that one
a bit
yeah.
more than you did, but I would say this is a better film than that.
Yeah.
But that was probably my first real big surprise for a movie I'd never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's always good to get some of the Oscar A to Z's that we've never heard of and check them out. Famous people's starts.
Yeah.
And we do have the Back to the Future minisode coming up as well. Speaking of the Oscar A to Z, we sort of bypassed Back to the Future in the A to Z because we're going to do a minisode about the entire trilogy of that series. So you can check that out on YouTube as well. All right, well, that is going to do it for our show. If you have not subscribed yet to our channel, go ahead and do that. And like I said earlier, the listener's choice things apply to just joining up and being part of the conversation, seeing our 5-word reviews. That's the Twitter, which is at Film Fanatics Pod, and the Facebook group at Film Fanatics with an exclamation point. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye!